Two people face the same problem. One gets stuck. They complain, worry, and feel overwhelmed. They analyze what went wrong endlessly. They blame circumstances, other people, bad luck. They spin their wheels and accomplish nothing. The other person moves forward. They quickly assess the situation, identify possible solutions, and take action. They don't waste time dwelling on the problem. They focus on solving it. Same problem. Completely different approach. Completely different outcome. This is the difference between problem-focused thinking and solution-focused thinking. And it's one of the most important distinctions you can make in your life. Problem-focused thinking keeps you stuck. You spend enormous mental and emotional energy on the problem itself. You analyze it. You worry about it. You talk about how bad it is. You feel victimized by it. But all of this doesn't solve anything. It just keeps you trapped in the problem. Solution-focused thinking moves you forward. You acknowledge the problem quickly, then immediately shift to, what can I do about this? What are my options? What's the next step? You don't ignore the problem. You just don't dwell on it. Because dwelling on problems doesn't solve them. Action does. Most people are trained to be problem-focused. In school, we analyze problems extensively. In meetings, we spend hours discussing what's wrong. In conversations, we bond over complaints. We've become experts at identifying, discussing, and worrying about problems, but we're often terrible at solving them. This audiobook is about changing that. It's about rewiring your brain to automatically shift from problems to solutions, to see obstacles not as barriers but as puzzles to solve, to respond to difficulties with, how can I fix this, instead of, why is this happening to me? This shift is transformative, because life is full of problems. Everyone faces obstacles, setbacks, and challenges. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't that successful. People have fewer problems. It's that they're better at solving them. And they're better at solving them because they focus on solutions, not problems. Here's what happens when you adopt solution-focused thinking. You become significantly more effective. Instead of spending 90% of your time on the problem and 10% on solutions, you flip that ratio. You quickly understand the problem, then spend most of your energy finding and implementing solutions. You experience less stress. Problem-focused thinking is emotionally draining. You're constantly dwelling on difficulties. Solution-focused thinking is energizing. You're taking action, making progress, seeing results. You become more resilient. When you face setbacks, you don't spiral into despair. You immediately start looking for solutions. Problems become temporary obstacles, not permanent barriers. You develop confidence. Each problem you solve proves you're capable. You build a track record of overcoming difficulties. This creates a sense of agency, the belief that you can handle whatever comes. You become valuable to others. Organizations, teams, and relationships all need problem solvers. People who don't just identify what's wrong but figure out how to make it right. That person is you. But becoming solution-focused requires deliberate practice. It's a mindset shift that doesn't happen automatically. You have to train yourself to think this way. That's what we're going to do together in this audiobook. We'll explore 10 essential principles: understanding the problem-solution dynamic, asking better questions, taking ownership of problems, identifying what you can control, generating multiple options, taking immediate action, learning from failures, reframing obstacles, building solution-focused habits, and maintaining forward momentum. These principles will transform how you approach every challenge in your life. From minor daily annoyances to major life obstacles, you'll have a framework for moving from problem to solution quickly and effectively. But I need something from you: a willingness to change how you think. If you're attached to complaining, blaming, and dwelling on problems, this approach will feel uncomfortable. Solution-focused thinking requires taking responsibility. It requires action. It requires letting go of victimhood and embracing agency. Can you do that? Can you commit to focusing on what you can do rather than what's wrong? If yes, then let's begin this journey. Because the world doesn't need more people who are good at complaining about problems. It needs people who are good at solving them. Your life doesn't need more analysis of what's wrong. It needs more action on what to do. Your future doesn't depend on how few problems you face. It depends on how effectively you solve the problems you do face. And that effectiveness comes from one simple shift: focusing on solutions, not problems. This isn't positive thinking or denial. This is practical problem solving. This is how effective people operate. This is how you achieve things despite obstacles. Every successful person you admire has faced enormous problems. What made them successful wasn't avoiding problems, it was solving them. And they solved them because they focused on solutions. That's the mindset we're building. That's the skill we're developing. That's the transformation we're creating. From this moment forward, you're not just going to encounter problems. You're going to solve them quickly, effectively, consistently, because you're becoming solution-focused. And solution-focused people don't stay stuck. They move forward. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Understand the problem-solution dynamic. Before you can become solution-focused, you need to understand why people get stuck in problem-focused thinking. It's not just bad habit. There are psychological reasons we dwell on problems. First, problems trigger our threat response. When something goes wrong, our brain perceives it as a threat. This activates stress and anxiety. We become hyper-focused on the problem because our brain thinks analyzing it will keep us safe. But this evolutionary response is outdated for most modern problems. Losing a client isn't a physical threat. A difficult conversation isn't a predator. Yet our brain treats them similarly, causing us to fixate. Second, we're trained to analyze problems. Education systems reward problem analysis. Teachers praise students who can identify what's wrong. We spend years learning to dissect problems, but very little time learning to solve them. This creates a bias toward analysis over action. We're comfortable picking problems apart. We're less comfortable creating solutions. Third, complaining about problems creates social bonding. When you complain, others often join in. You bond over shared frustration. This social reward reinforces problem-focused thinking. But this bonding doesn't solve anything. It just makes everyone feel justified in their frustration. Fourth, focusing on problems can feel safer than attempting solutions. If you try a solution and it fails, you've actually failed. But if you just analyze the problem, you haven't failed at anything. You're just being thorough. This is avoidance disguised as conscientiousness. Understanding these dynamics is crucial because you need to actively counter them. Your default programming is problem-focused. You must consciously choose solution-focused thinking. Here's the fundamental principle. Problems and solutions exist on a spectrum of attention. The more attention you give to the problem, the less you give to solutions. The more you focus on solutions, the less the problem dominates your thinking. Most people spend 80–90% of their mental energy on the problem, and only 10–20% on solutions. This ratio needs to reverse. Solution-focused thinking isn't about ignoring problems. It's about quickly understanding them, then spending most of your energy on solutions. Think of it like this. Imagine you have 100 units of mental energy. Problem-focused people spend 90 units analyzing the problem and 10 units on solutions. Solution-focused people spend 20 units understanding the problem and 80 units on solutions. Who's more likely to solve the problem? Obviously, the person who allocated more resources to solutions. Here's how to shift the dynamic. First, acknowledge the problem quickly. Don't ignore it or minimize it, but don't dwell on it either. Okay, this is the situation. This is what's wrong. Got it. That's all the acknowledgement you need. 10 seconds to a minute, then move on. Second, immediately ask solution-oriented questions. What can I do about this? What are my options? What's one thing I can try? This shifts your brain from analysis mode to solution mode, from passive to active, from victim to agent. Third, set a time limit on problem discussion. Whether you're thinking alone or discussing with others, give yourself a specific amount of time to discuss the problem. Then move to solutions. We have 5 minutes to outline the problem. Then we're moving to solutions. This creates urgency and prevents endless dwelling. Fourth, notice when you're stuck in problem-focused thinking. Self-awareness is key. When you catch yourself complaining, worrying, or analyzing the problem endlessly, stop. Redirect to solutions. I'm dwelling on the problem. Let me shift to solutions instead. Fifth, celebrate solutions, not problem identification. Don't reward yourself or others for identifying problems. Reward finding and implementing solutions. This creates the right incentive structure. You get positive reinforcement for solving, not just identifying. Here's what happens when you understand and shift this dynamic. You become dramatically more effective. Problems that used to paralyze you become manageable. You develop a bias toward action. Others notice too. You become known as someone who solves problems rather than just talks about them. That's a reputation worth having. Let me give you an example. Two teams face the same business problem. Sales are down. Team A spends their entire meeting discussing why sales are down: the economy, competition, their product shortcomings, bad timing. They analyze thoroughly. They feel justified in their analysis, but they don't actually do anything to improve sales. Team B spends 5 minutes acknowledging that sales are down and identifying potential causes. Then they spend the rest of the meeting brainstorming and planning solutions, new marketing approaches, different sales strategies, product improvements. They leave with action items. Which team will improve their sales? Team B, because they focused on solutions. Here's your action step. For the next week, track how much time you spend on problems versus solutions. Every time you encounter a problem, note how long you spend discussing, thinking about the problem, and how long on solutions. Most people are shocked when they actually measure this. They think they're solution-focused, but discover they spend 90% of their time on the problem. Once you're aware of your current ratio, you can consciously shift it. Spend less time on problems, more on solutions. Understand the dynamic. Choose solutions over problems. Transform your effectiveness. Chapter 2. Ask better questions. The questions you ask determine where your mind goes. Ask problem-focused questions, and your mind dwells on problems. Ask solution-focused questions, and your mind generates solutions. Most people ask terrible questions. Questions that keep them stuck. Questions that produce more problems rather than solutions. Why is this happening to me? Why is this so hard? What's wrong with me? Who's to blame? These questions feel natural, but they're destructive. They focus your attention on the problem and often create a victim mentality. They don't generate useful answers. Solution-focused people ask different questions. Questions that direct their minds toward action, options, and progress. What can I do about this? What's one small step I can take right now? What resources do I have? Who might be able to help? What have I done successfully in similar situations? These questions are productive. They generate useful answers. They move you forward. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. So let's upgrade your questions. Here are the most powerful solution-focused questions. What do I want instead? When facing a problem, most people focus on what they don't want. I don't want to be in debt. I don't want this relationship to fail. I don't want to feel anxious. This keeps them focused on the negative. Instead, ask what you do want. I want financial stability. I want a healthy relationship. I want to feel calm and confident. This redirects your mind toward the desired outcome, which naturally generates solution ideas. What can I control in this situation? Many problems involve elements you can't control. Focusing on those creates helplessness. Instead, identify what you can control. Even in the worst situations, you control something: your attitude, your effort, your next action. Focus there. What's one small thing I could try? This question is powerful because it removes the pressure of finding the perfect solution. You're just looking for one small thing to try. Small actions reduce overwhelm and create momentum. Once you're moving, additional solutions often become clear. What would someone I admire do in this situation? This question gives you a different perspective. If you're stuck, imagine how someone you respect would handle this. What would they do? What advice would they give you? This often reveals solutions you couldn't see from your own perspective. What's the opportunity in this problem? Every problem contains opportunity. A chance to learn something, a chance to develop a skill, a chance to strengthen a relationship, a chance to innovate. This question helps you reframe the problem as valuable rather than just negative. What have I learned from similar situations? You've faced problems before. You've overcome difficulties. What did you learn? What worked? How can you apply that here? This question connects you to your own resourcefulness and past successes. What would make this situation 10% better? You don't need to solve the entire problem immediately. Just make it slightly better. This question creates manageable goals. Once you've improved it by 10%, you can improve it another 10%. Progress compounds. What's my next action? This is perhaps the most important question. It moves you from thinking to doing. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to know your next step. Next actions are concrete and achievable. They create forward momentum. Here's how to implement better questions. First, write down your most common negative questions. What do you typically ask yourself when facing problems? Identify your default problem-focused questions. Second, create solution-focused alternatives. For each problem-focused question, write a better version. Keep this list somewhere accessible. Third, interrupt yourself when you ask bad questions. Catch yourself asking, "Why me?" and consciously replace it with, "What can I do about this?" This interruption and replacement is how you rewire your thinking. Fourth, start every problem-solving session with solution-focused questions. Whether you're alone or with others, establish this as your framework. Before we discuss this problem, let's be clear on our questions. We're asking, what can we do? What are our options? What's our next step? Fifth, help others ask better questions. When someone comes to you dwelling on a problem, gently redirect, "I hear you. That's challenging. So what do you think you could do about it?" You're teaching them to be solution-focused. Here's what happens when you ask better questions. Your entire mental landscape shifts. Your brain becomes oriented toward solutions automatically. Problems that used to seem overwhelming become interesting puzzles. You develop a sense of agency because your questions presuppose you can take action. Let me give you an example. Two people lose their jobs. Person A asks, "Why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Why is life so unfair? What am I going to do?" These questions create anxiety and helplessness. They don't generate useful answers. Person B asks, "What skills do I have that employers value? What kind of work would I enjoy more? Who in my network might know of opportunities? What's one thing I can do today to move forward?" These questions generate actionable answers. They create a path forward. Same situation. Different questions, different outcomes. Here's your action step. Choose 3 solution-focused questions from this chapter.
Write them down!
Put them somewhere you'll see them daily. Then every time you face a problem this week, deliberately ask these questions. Make it a practice until it becomes automatic. Ask better questions. Generate better answers. Create better outcomes. Chapter 3. Take ownership of problems. Here's a truth that many people resist. You're responsible for solving your problems, regardless of who caused them. This seems unfair. If someone else created the problem, why should you have to solve it? If circumstances are to blame, why is it your responsibility? Because whether it's fair or not, you're the one who will experience the consequences. You're the one whose life is affected. So you're the one with the most motivation to solve it. Problem-focused thinking gets trapped in blame and fairness. It's not my fault. I shouldn't have to fix this. They should fix it. Maybe that's true. But while you're waiting for others to fix your problems, you remain stuck. You're giving away your power. Solution-focused thinking takes ownership. This is affecting me, so I'm going to address it. I didn't cause it, but I'll solve it. This isn't about accepting blame for things you didn't do. It's about accepting responsibility for your response and outcomes. Here's the distinction. Fault is about the past. Who caused the problem? Responsibility is about the future. Who will solve it? Those don't have to be the same person. Someone else might have caused your problem, but you're responsible for solving it because it's your life. Let me give you an example. Someone rear-ends your car. Clearly their fault. But while you're focused on blame, your car is still damaged. You still need transportation. You still have problems. You can focus on how unfair it is that you have to deal with this. Or you can take ownership. This happened. Now I need to handle it. I'll file the claim, arrange repairs, get a rental car. Taking ownership doesn't mean accepting fault. It means taking control of the solution. Here's why ownership is essential for solution-focused thinking. First, ownership gives you power. When you blame others or circumstances, you're saying, "I'm helpless. I can't do anything until they change." That might be true in some absolute sense, but it's also powerless. You're stuck waiting for others. When you take ownership, you're saying, "I can influence this situation. I can take actions that improve things." Even if you can't completely solve a problem someone else created, you can almost always make it better through your actions. Second, ownership creates urgency. When you're waiting for others to fix your problem, there's no urgency. You can complain indefinitely. When you take ownership, you feel urgency. It's your responsibility now. You need to act. Third, ownership develops capability. Every problem you take ownership of and solve builds your problem-solving skills. You become more capable. People who always blame others for their problems never develop these skills. They remain dependent on others to solve things. Fourth, ownership creates self-respect. When you take responsibility for solving your problems, you respect yourself more. You're not a victim. You're not helpless. You're someone who takes charge. This self-respect is tremendously valuable. It affects every area of your life. Here's how to take ownership. First, separate fault from responsibility. Acknowledge fault if it helps you learn, but don't get stuck there. Quickly move to, regardless of who caused this, I'm responsible for my response. Second, ask, what can I control? In any situation, identify what's within your control. That's where your ownership lies. You might not control the problem's existence, but you control your actions, your attitude, your choices. Third, make a declaration. This is my problem to solve. Say it out loud. Write it down. Declare ownership. This declaration is psychological. It shifts you from passive to active, from victim to agent. Fourth, stop complaining and start planning. Complaining is passive. It focuses on the problem and how unfair it is. Planning is active. It focuses on solutions. Notice when you're complaining. Stop. Start planning instead. Fifth, take action, however small. Ownership without action is just words. Take one action today that moves toward a solution. This action proves your ownership. It demonstrates you're not just talking, you're doing. Sixth, don't wait for permission. You don't need anyone's permission to solve your own problems. If you're waiting for someone to acknowledge it's not your fault or to say you should handle it, you're giving away power. Just handle it. Take ownership without waiting for permission. Here's what happens when you take ownership. You become dramatically more effective. Problems that others are still complaining about, you've already solved. You develop a reputation as someone who handles things. People trust you with responsibility because you take ownership. Most importantly, you stop feeling like a victim. You recognize that regardless of what happens to you, you always have some control over your response and outcomes. This is tremendously empowering. Let me address a concern. But if I take ownership of problems that aren't my fault, am I letting others off the hook? You can hold others accountable while still taking ownership of your response. They're not mutually exclusive, but your ownership doesn't depend on them accepting fault. You solve your problem regardless of whether they accept responsibility. Another concern, isn't this just accepting that life is unfair? Life is often unfair. That's reality. You can spend your energy being upset about that, or you can spend it solving your problems. One approach keeps you stuck. The other moves you forward. Here's your action step. Identify one problem you've been blaming someone or something else for. A problem where you've been stuck because it's not my fault. This week, take ownership of it. Declare, this is my problem to solve. Then identify 3 actions you can take to improve the situation. Take those actions. Prove to yourself that ownership creates power and progress. Take ownership. Stop blaming. Start solving. Chapter 4. Identify what you can control. One of the most powerful solution-focused principles is the control dichotomy. Focusing your energy exclusively on what you can control and accepting what you can't. This sounds simple. It's not. Most people waste enormous energy trying to control things they have no control over while neglecting things they do control. They stress about others' opinions, which they can't control. They worry about outcomes which they can't fully control. They obsess over past events, which they definitely can't control. Meanwhile, they neglect things they can control: their effort, their attitude, their actions, their choices, their responses. This misallocation of energy creates both stress and ineffectiveness. You feel powerless because you're focused on what you're powerless over. You don't make progress because you're not acting on what you actually can change. Solution-focused thinking requires clear understanding of your circle of control. What's actually within your power? Focus there. Everything else? Accept it and move on. Here's how to identify and focus on what you can control. First, understand the 3 circles. Stephen Covey described 3 circles: the circle of concern, everything you care about; the circle of influence, things you can affect; and the circle of control, things you directly control. Most people focus on their circle of concern. all the things they worry about but can't control. This creates anxiety and powerlessness. Effective people focus on their circle of control, the things they directly control. This creates power and progress. Second, identify what you actually control. In any situation, what do you directly control? You control your thoughts, your actions, your words, your effort, your attitude, your choices, your habits, your responses. You don't control others' thoughts, others' actions, others' opinions, most outcomes, past events, many circumstances. This list should guide all your problem solving. Focus on the first list, accept the second. Third, when facing a problem, make two lists. Left column, things about this problem I can't control. Right column, things I can control. Be honest and thorough. Then focus all your energy on the right column. The left column exists to help you stop wasting energy on it. Fourth, ask, where is my leverage? In any situation, where can your actions actually make a difference? That's where to focus. Maybe you can't control whether you get a job, but you can control the quality of your application and interview preparation. That's your leverage. Maybe you can't control others' reactions, but you can control how clearly you communicate. That's your leverage. Fifth, practice radical acceptance of what you can't control. This doesn't mean liking it. It means recognizing reality and not fighting against it uselessly. You can't change the past. Accept it. You can't control others. Accept it. You can't guarantee outcomes. Accept it. This acceptance isn't giving up. It's freeing energy to focus on what you can change. Sixth, expand your circle of control by taking action. Interestingly, your circle of control grows as you focus on it. The more you exercise control over your actions and responses, the more influence you develop. You become more capable, more skilled, more powerful. But this only happens when you focus on your circle of control, not on your circle of concern. Seventh, stop complaining about what you can't control. Every minute spent complaining about uncontrollables is wasted. Catch yourself doing this and redirect. I can't control that. What can I control here? Eighth, make peace with uncertainty. Many outcomes are uncertain. You can't control how things will turn out. Accept this. Focus on maximizing your probability of good outcomes through your controllable actions. Then accept whatever results come. Here's what happens when you focus on what you can control. You become significantly more effective and peaceful. More effective because all your energy goes to things you can actually change. More peaceful because you're not stressing about things outside your power. Others notice. You seem calm while others panic. You're taking action while others complain. You're making progress while others feel stuck. Let me give you an example. Two people face difficult coworkers. Person A focuses on what they can't control. Why is this person so difficult? Why don't they change? Why did I get stuck with them? This isn't fair. They waste energy on things they can't control. The coworker doesn't change. Person A stays frustrated. Person B focuses on what they can control. I can't change this person, but I can control how I interact with them. I can set clear boundaries. I can communicate professionally. I can focus on my work. They direct energy to their controllables. The coworker might not change, but person B's experience improves because they're controlling what they can. Same situation. Different focus. Different outcomes. Let me address a concern. If I only focus on what I can control, am I giving up on changing things I care about? No, you focus your efforts on the aspects you can control. If you want to change something, identify what actions you can take to influence it. That's your circle of control. You're not giving up on the outcome. You're focusing on your controllable inputs that might create that outcome. Another concern, some things feel like I should be able to control them, but I can't, like my emotions. You don't directly control emotions, but you do control actions that influence emotions. You control whether you exercise, sleep well, challenge negative thoughts, practice gratitude. Focus on those controllable actions that affect the uncontrollable feelings. Here's your action step. Take a current problem. Draw 3 columns labeled Can't Control, Can Influence, and Can Control. List all aspects of the problem in the appropriate columns. Then commit to focusing exclusively on the Can Control and Can Influence columns. Every time you catch yourself stressing about the Can't Control column, redirect. I can't control that. What can I control? Do this consistently for a week. Watch how your effectiveness and peace of mind improve. Identify what you can control. Focus there exclusively. Accept the rest. Chapter 5. Generate multiple options. Problem-focused thinkers see one option, the obvious solution. When it doesn't work, they're stuck. They feel helpless. Solution-focused thinkers generate multiple options. They brainstorm possibilities. They look for different approaches. When one doesn't work, they try another. This abundance of options creates power. You're never stuck with just one path. You always have alternatives, but generating options is a skill. It requires specific techniques. Most people stop too early in their idea generation. They think of one or two options and assume that's all there is. Here's how to generate multiple options for any problem. First, set a minimum number. Don't stop brainstorming until you have at least 5 options, sometimes more. This forces you past the obvious answers. The first few options are usually the most obvious ones. The later options are often more creative and effective. Second, use the yes and technique. When you think of one option, add yes and what else. Keep asking until you've exhausted possibilities. This prevents premature closure. You're not settling on the first decent option. You're exploring the full landscape. Third, consider opposites. If one option is to increase something, consider decreasing it. If one is to add something, consider removing something. Opposites often reveal unexpected solutions. Fourth, look at different timescales. Could you solve this immediately? In a week, in a month? Different timescales suggest different options. Sometimes the quick fix isn't best. Sometimes the long-term solution isn't necessary. Explore both. Fifth, consider different resource levels. What could you do with unlimited resources? With your current resources? With half your current resources? These constraints and freedoms suggest different creative solutions. Sixth, ask, what would person do? Insert different people. Someone you admire, someone creative, someone analytical, someone bold. Different perspectives reveal different options. Seventh, combine solutions. Maybe 2 partial solutions together create a complete solution. Maybe multiple small actions combined solve a big problem. Don't assume you need one big solution. Sometimes the answer is multiple smaller ones. Eighth, look for the non-obvious path. The most effective solution is often not the most obvious one. Be willing to consider unconventional options. Ninth, seek input from others. Other people have different perspectives and experiences. They'll see options you don't. Describe your problem to someone else and ask, what would you do? Their suggestions might spark ideas. 10th, research how others solve similar problems. You're rarely the first person to face a particular type of problem. How did others handle it? This research generates options you wouldn't think of alone. Here's why multiple options matter. First, they create flexibility. When circumstances change, you can adapt. You're not committed to one approach that might not work. Second, they reduce pressure. When you have only one option, it must work. That creates anxiety. When you have 5 options, each one is just a possibility to test. Third, they enable experimentation. You can try different approaches and see what works. You're testing hypotheses, not betting everything on one answer. Fourth, they reveal patterns. Sometimes generating options helps you see underlying principles. These 3 options all involve getting help from others. Maybe that's important. Fifth, they build confidence. Knowing you have multiple paths forward makes you feel capable. You're not stuck with one desperate attempt. Here's how to practice this. Take any current problem. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Generate as many potential solutions as possible. Don't judge them. Don't worry if they're good. Just generate quantity over quality initially. Get to at least 15 options. Some will be terrible. That's fine. You're training your brain to generate possibilities. After generating, then evaluate. Which options are most feasible? Which are most likely to work? Which could you test quickly? Select 2 or 3 to try. Implement them. See what happens. Let me give you an example. Someone needs to increase their income. Problem-focused person thinks of one option. Ask for a raise. If denied, they're stuck. Solution-focused person generates 15 options. Ask for a raise. Take on freelance work. Sell unused items. Start a side business. Change jobs. Reduce expenses instead. Develop skills worth more money. Ask for additional hours. Monetize a hobby. Rent out a room. tutor or teach consulting, create digital products, invest existing money better, partner with someone on a project. Now they have abundant options. They can try multiple approaches. They're not stuck. Let me address a concern. Won't this take too much time? Why not just go with the obvious solution? Sometimes the obvious solution works fine, but often it doesn't. Then you're stuck. Spending 10 minutes generating options saves hours or days of being stuck with an ineffective solution. Another concern, many of my options won't be good. Isn't that wasteful? No, having bad options on your list doesn't hurt. You just don't choose them. But the process of generating them might spark better ideas. Also, sometimes options that seem bad initially turn out to be viable with modification. Here's your action step. Choose one problem you're currently facing. Generate 15 potential solutions. Don't stop until you reach 15, then evaluate them. Pick the top 3 to try. Implement them this week. Notice how having multiple options changes your mindset. You're not desperate. You're not stuck. You have paths forward. Generate multiple options. Create abundance of possibilities. Always have a path forward. Chapter 6. Take immediate action. Analysis is valuable. Planning is important, but neither solves problems. Only action does. Solution-focused thinking emphasizes action, specifically immediate action, not perfect action, not complete action, just any action that moves toward a solution. Problem-focused people get stuck in planning. They analyze endlessly. They wait for perfect clarity. They want to see the whole path before taking the first step. This paralysis prevents progress. While they're analyzing, the problem persists. While they're planning, nothing changes. Solution-focused people take immediate action. They do something, anything productive, right away. They recognize that action creates clarity. That progress creates momentum. That small steps lead to big changes. Here's why immediate action is essential. First, action creates information. You don't know what will work until you try it. Analyzing theoretically has limits. Real-world testing produces real answers. 1 hour of action often teaches you more than 10 hours of thinking. Second, action builds momentum. The hardest part of solving any problem is starting. Once you've taken one action, the next is easier. Inertia works both ways. Objects at rest stay at rest. Objects in motion stay in motion. Be in motion. Third, action reduces anxiety. When you're stuck thinking about a problem, anxiety builds. When you're actively working on it, anxiety decreases. You feel more in control because you are more in control. You're doing something. Fourth, action creates compound effects. Each small action might not solve the entire problem, but small actions accumulate. They build on each other. They create change. Fifth, action provides motivation. People think motivation leads to action. Often it's reversed. Action leads to motivation. Take one small action, and you feel motivated to take another. Wait to feel motivated, and you stay stuck. Here's how to take immediate action. First, identify the smallest possible first step. Don't think about solving the entire problem. What's one tiny thing you could do right now? Make it so small that resistance is minimal. So small you could do it in the next 5 minutes. Second, do that step immediately. Not later, not tomorrow, right now, or within the next hour at most. Speed is important. Don't give yourself time to overthink or create excuses. Third, use the 2-minute rule. If an action takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Don't add it to a list. Don't schedule it. Just do it now. This prevents accumulation of small tasks and builds action bias. Fourth, set a timer for action. Commit to working on the problem for just 10 minutes. Often, once you start, you'll continue beyond 10 minutes. But even if you only work for 10 minutes, you've taken action. You've made progress. Fifth, focus on progress, not perfection. Your first action doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be something. Perfectionists get stuck because no action seems good enough. Solution-focused people accept imperfect action because imperfect action beats perfect inaction. Sixth, create urgency. Don't let problems sit indefinitely. Decide, I will take action on this today. This urgency prevents procrastination and drift. Seventh, make action easier than inaction. Remove barriers to starting. Prepare what you need. Eliminate distractions. When action is easy, you're more likely to do it immediately. Eighth, track your action. Note what you did. Even small actions count. This tracking reinforces action bias. You're building a pattern of taking action rather than just thinking about it. Here's what happens when you take immediate action. You solve problems faster. You spend less time stuck. You build momentum quickly. Others might still be thinking about their problems. You're already solving yours. This action bias becomes your competitive advantage. In business, relationships, personal growth, everywhere, people who act quickly progress faster. Let me give you an example. Two people realize they're out of shape. Person A thinks about it. They research the perfect workout program. They plan when they'll start. They wait for ideal conditions. They never actually begin. Person B does 5 push-ups immediately. Tomorrow they do 5 more. Next week they add a short walk. They're not following a perfect program, but they're making progress while Person A is still planning. 6 months later, Person B is noticeably fitter. Person A is still researching and planning. Action beats planning, even imperfect action. Let me address a concern. Won't I make mistakes if I act too quickly without enough analysis? Yes, possibly, but you'll make mistakes either way. The question is whether you learn from mistakes quickly through action or make bigger mistakes later through inaction. Mistakes from action are correctable. You try something, it doesn't work, you adjust. Mistakes from inaction are missed opportunities. You waited too long and now the option is gone. Generally, action mistakes are better than inaction mistakes. Another concern. Don't some problems require careful thought before action? Yes, some do. Major decisions with irreversible consequences deserve careful thought. But most problems don't fall in this category. Most problems benefit from quick action. And even for major decisions, you can usually take small exploratory actions while thinking. The bias should be toward action unless there's a strong reason for delay. Here's your action step. For every problem you encounter this week, take one action within 1 hour of identifying the problem. Don't analyze it exhaustively. Don't make a perfect plan. Just identify one action you can take right now and do it. Even if it's tiny. Even if it's not perfect. Just do something immediately. Watch how this immediate action bias transforms your effectiveness. Problems that used to linger for days get resolved in hours. Take immediate action. Create momentum. Solve problems quickly. Chapter 7. Learn from failures. They're data, not verdicts. In problem-focused thinking, failure is devastating. It's evidence you're not good enough. It's a reason to give up. It confirms your limitations. In solution-focused thinking, failure is feedback. It's information about what doesn't work. It's an opportunity to adjust your approach. It's a step toward the solution. Same event. Attempting something and it not working. Completely different interpretation. And that interpretation determines whether you keep trying or quit. Most people's relationship with failure keeps them stuck. They're so afraid of failure that they don't try. Or they fail once and quit. Or they interpret failure as permanent verdict on their capability. This prevents them from solving problems. Because solving problems requires experimentation. And experimentation includes failure. You need to change your relationship with failure. Here's how. First, redefine failure. Failure is not a verdict on you. It's information about your approach. You tried something. It didn't work. That's data. Now you know one thing that doesn't work. That's valuable information. Thomas Edison famously said he didn't fail 1,000 times at creating the light bulb. He successfully found 1,000 ways that don't work. This reframe is essential. Each failed attempt is progress toward the solution. Second, adopt a scientist mindset. Scientists run experiments. Many experiments fail. That's expected and valuable. Failed experiments eliminate incorrect hypotheses and guide future experiments. Approach problem-solving the same way. You're running experiments. Some will fail. That's part of the process, not a problem with you. Third, focus on what you learned. After any failure, ask, what did I learn? What can I do differently next time? What worked even though the overall attempt didn't? This extraction of learning ensures the failure was valuable. You didn't waste effort. You gained knowledge. Fourth, fail fast and cheap. Don't invest enormous resources in one untested approach. Test quickly with minimal investment. If it fails, you haven't lost much. If it succeeds, then you invest more. This strategy allows you to fail frequently without devastating consequences. Each failure is low cost but high learning. Fifth, expect failure as part of the process. Don't be surprised when something doesn't work. You're trying new things. Some won't work. That's normal. Surprise and disappointment come from unrealistic expectations. Expect some failure and it doesn't derail you emotionally. Sixth, separate your worth from outcomes. You're not less valuable because an attempt failed. Your worth is inherent, not based on results. This separation is crucial. If failure threatens your self-worth, you'll avoid trying. If failure is just information, you can experiment freely. Seventh, celebrate trying. Success or failure, the fact that you tried is worth celebrating. You took action. You didn't sit on the sidelines. Many people never try because they're afraid to fail. You're different. You're in the arena. That's admirable regardless of outcome. Eighth, iterate quickly. After failure, adjust your approach and try again quickly. Don't dwell on the failure. Don't take months to recover. Adjust and retry immediately. Speed of iteration is a massive advantage. The faster you can fail, learn, adjust, retry, the faster you solve problems. Ninth, share your failures. When appropriate, talk about your failures and what you learned. This normalizes failure and helps others. It also reduces shame around failure. If you can talk about it openly, it's just information, not something to hide. 10th, keep a failure log. Document attempts that didn't work and what you learned. Review it periodically. This log proves that failure leads to progress. You're eliminating what doesn't work, which brings you closer to what does. Here's what happens when you learn from failures. You become unstoppable. You're willing to try things others won't because you're not afraid of failure. You experiment more. You learn faster. You solve problems others can't because you're willing to fail your way to the solution. Think about any successful person. They have countless failures. The difference is they didn't stop after failing. They learned and tried again. You have the same capacity, but only if you change your relationship with failure. Let me give you an example. Two people start businesses. Person A launches their first product. It fails. They take this as a verdict. I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur. They quit. Person B launches their first product. It fails. They ask, what did I learn? What can I do differently? They adjust their approach and launch again. This fails too. They learn more and launch a third time. This succeeds. Person A had one failure. Person B had two failures but ultimately succeeded. The difference? Relationship with failure. Let me address a concern. But doesn't repeated failure mean I should give up? Maybe I'm not capable? Maybe, but probably not. Most people give up way before they should. They fail a few times and assume they've reached their limit. In reality, success often requires many failures first. The question isn't, am I failing? It's, am I learning and adjusting? If you're making the same mistakes repeatedly, that's a problem. If you're learning from each failure and adjusting, you're on the path to success. Another concern, isn't this just glorifying failure? Shouldn't we aim to succeed? Of course, aim to succeed. But recognize that failure is often necessary on the path to success. You're not seeking failure. You're accepting it as part of the process when it happens. Here's your action step. Identify something you tried that didn't work. Maybe recently, maybe in the past. Write down everything you learned from that experience. What did it teach you about yourself? About the problem? About potential solutions? Then ask, what could you try differently based on what you learned? Plan your next attempt incorporating those lessons. Transform failure from verdict to data. Learn from failures. Use them to solve problems. Chapter 8. Reframe obstacles as opportunities. Every obstacle contains opportunity. Every problem has potential value. Every challenge offers growth. But most people don't see this. They see only the negative. This limited perception keeps them problem-focused. The obstacle is just bad luck, misfortune, something to complain about. Solution-focused people reframe obstacles. They look for the opportunity within the challenge. They ask, how can this make me stronger? What can I gain from this? What's the silver lining? This reframing isn't denial. The obstacle is still real. The challenge is still difficult, but the interpretation changes from purely negative to potentially valuable. This shift is powerful because it transforms your emotional response and your actions. When something is purely negative, you resist it and feel victimized. When it contains opportunity, you engage with it actively. Here's how to reframe obstacles as opportunities. First, ask, what's the gift in this problem? Every problem contains something valuable if you look for it. Maybe it's teaching you a skill. Maybe it's forcing you to innovate. Maybe it's revealing something important. Maybe it's connecting you with someone valuable. Find the gift. This shifts your relationship with the problem. Second, consider, how could this be preparing me for something better? Maybe this obstacle is training you for a larger opportunity later. The job rejection might be preparing you for a better position. The business failure might be teaching you what you need to know for future success. Frame current obstacles as preparation for future opportunities. Third, look for forced innovation. Obstacles often force creative solutions you wouldn't have found otherwise. Constraints breed creativity. Limited resources force efficiency. Difficulties inspire innovation. Many great solutions emerge because someone faced an obstacle that forced them to think differently. Fourth, identify character development. What quality is this obstacle building in you? Patience, resilience, creativity, determination? You're becoming stronger through this challenge. That's valuable regardless of the immediate outcome. Fifth, notice unexpected connections. Sometimes obstacles lead to opportunities you couldn't have planned. You lose a job and meet your future business partner while job searching. A relationship ends and you discover independence and self-reliance. A health issue prompts lifestyle changes that improve your life overall. Stay open to unexpected positive outcomes from negative events. Sixth, ask, what would I tell someone else in this situation? If a friend faced this obstacle, you'd probably help them see opportunities within it. Apply that same wisdom to yourself. Be as generous with yourself as you'd be with others. Seventh, use the best thing that ever happened to me. Frame. How could this obstacle eventually be one of the best things that happened to you? This seems impossible in the moment, but looking back, people often say their biggest obstacles led to their greatest opportunities. Adopt that perspective now, not just in retrospect. Eighth, look for what this makes possible. Sometimes obstacles close one door but open others you wouldn't have considered. This rejection makes something else possible. This failure creates space for a different opportunity. This challenge forces you to explore options you were ignoring. Ninth, practice gratitude for challenges. This feels counterintuitive, but being grateful for difficulties reduces their negative power. I'm grateful for this challenge because it's making me stronger, teaching me, preparing me for what's next. Gratitude shifts your relationship with obstacles from resistance to acceptance and engagement. 10th, document past transformations. Look back at previous obstacles that ended up creating opportunities. Remind yourself that obstacles often lead to good things eventually. This historical perspective helps you trust the process when facing current obstacles. Here's what happens when you reframe obstacles. You become anti-fragile. You don't just survive difficulties. You gain from them. Obstacles that would devastate others become fuel for your growth. Problems that would stop others become opportunities you pursue. This makes you remarkably resilient and adaptable. You're never devastated by setbacks because you're always looking for the opportunity within them. Let me give you an example. Two people lose major clients. Person A sees only the negative: lost income, damaged reputation, business failure. They feel victimized and discouraged. They struggle to move forward. Person B sees the opportunity. This forces them to diversify their client base, update their services, improve their marketing. They realize they were too dependent on one client. This loss makes them stronger. Same obstacle, different frame, different outcome. Person B's business becomes more resilient and successful because they reframed the obstacle as an opportunity to improve. Let me address a concern. Isn't this just toxic positivity? Sometimes things are just bad. Yes, some things are genuinely bad. But even in bad situations, your response matters. Finding opportunity isn't denying difficulty. It's choosing to grow through it. You can acknowledge something as hard while also looking for value in it. They're not mutually exclusive. Another concern: what if I can't find any opportunity in my obstacle? Sometimes the opportunity isn't obvious immediately. Keep looking. Ask others for perspective. Give it time, but at minimum, the opportunity is character development. This is making you stronger, more resilient, more capable. That's always valuable. Here's your action step. Identify your biggest current obstacle. Write it down. Now write down 10 potential opportunities within this obstacle. How could it make you stronger? What could it teach you? What might it make possible? How could it eventually be valuable? Push yourself to find 10. Even if some seem like stretches, you're training your brain to look for opportunity in difficulty. Then choose one of those opportunities to focus on. Let that opportunity guide your actions and attitude toward this obstacle. Reframe obstacles as opportunities. Find value in difficulties. Transform challenges into growth. Chapter 9. Build solution-focused habits. Being solution-focused isn't just about how you respond in crisis moments. It's about your default operating mode, your automatic thinking patterns, your habits. If solution-focused thinking is only something you consciously do when facing big problems, it won't transform your life. You need it to be automatic, habitual, your default response. This requires building solution-focused habits, patterns of thinking and acting that reinforce solution orientation until it becomes who you are. Here's how to build these habits. First, start every day with a solution-focused question. Before you get out of bed, ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today to move forward on my goals? This sets a solution-oriented tone for the day. You're priming your brain to look for actions and possibilities. Second, do a nightly review. Every evening, reflect on your day through a solution lens. What problems did you face? How did you respond? What solutions did you implement? What worked? What didn't? What will you try tomorrow? This review reinforces solution-focused thinking. You're training your brain to automatically analyze situations in terms of solutions. Third, catch and redirect problem-focused thoughts. Throughout the day, notice when you're dwelling on problems. Catch yourself complaining, worrying, or analyzing what's wrong. Then deliberately redirect, okay, what can I do about this? Each time you catch and redirect, you're strengthening the solution-focused neural pathway. Fourth, practice the immediate action habit. When you identify a problem, take one action within 60 minutes. Make this automatic. Problem appears. Take one immediate action. This prevents the dwelling and paralysis that problem-focused thinking creates. Fifth, keep a solutions journal. Every time you solve a problem, write it down. What was the problem? What solutions did you try? What worked? Over time, this journal becomes evidence of your problem-solving capability. It reinforces your solution-focused identity. Sixth, use solution-focused language. Pay attention to how you talk about problems. Replace problem-focused language with solution-focused language. Instead of, this is terrible, say, this is challenging. What can I do about it? Instead of, why does this always happen to me? Say, this happened. What's my next step? Language shapes thinking. Solution-focused language creates solution-focused thinking. Seventh, surround yourself with solution-focused people. Your social environment influences your thinking patterns. Spend time with people who solve problems rather than just complain about them. Their mindset will reinforce yours. Distance yourself from chronic complainers. Their problem-focused thinking is contagious. Eighth, create solution-focused rituals. Design daily or weekly practices that reinforce solution orientation. Maybe every Monday morning, you identify your key problems and brainstorm solutions. Maybe every evening you write down one problem you solved that day. These rituals make solution-focused thinking a regular practice, not just an occasional response. Ninth, reward solution-focused behavior. When you catch yourself being solution-focused, acknowledge it. Celebrate it. I noticed that problem and immediately started thinking about solutions. Good job. This positive reinforcement strengthens the habit. 10th, make it visible. Put solution-focused reminders in your environment. Sticky notes that say, what's one thing I can do right now? Desktop wallpaper with solution-focused questions. Visual cues that prompt solution thinking. Here's what happens when you build solution-focused habits. It becomes automatic. You don't have to consciously choose to be solution-focused. It's just how you think. Problems arise, and your brain automatically moves to solutions. Obstacles appear, and you immediately start generating options. Difficulties emerge, and you instinctively take action. This automaticity is powerful because it doesn't require willpower or conscious effort. It's just who you are. Let me give you an example. Two people face multiple daily problems. Person A has to consciously remind themselves to be solution-focused. Sometimes they remember, sometimes they don't. When stressed, they revert to complaining and worrying. Person B has built solution-focused habits. Their default response to any problem is, what can I do about this? They don't have to think about it. It's automatic. Same number of problems, But person B solves them effortlessly because solution thinking is habitual. Person A struggles because they have to consciously fight their problem-focused defaults. Let me address a concern. Won't solution-focused habits make me ignore the emotional impact of problems? No. You can acknowledge emotions while still being solution-focused. Feel disappointed about a setback, then ask, what can I do now? Solution-focused doesn't mean emotionless. It means not getting stuck in negative emotions without moving toward solutions. Another concern, how long does it take to build these habits? Research suggests 30 to 90 days of consistent practice to form a habit, but you'll notice benefits much sooner. After just a week of deliberate practice, you'll catch yourself being solution-focused more often. After a month, it starts feeling natural. Here's your action step. Choose 3 solution-focused habits from this chapter. Commit to practicing them for the next 30 days. Maybe it's the morning question, the evening review, and catching and redirecting problem thoughts. Pick 3 that resonate. Put reminders in your environment. Track your practice. Notice how your thinking shifts. After 30 days, these will feel more natural. Add more habits gradually until solution-focused thinking is your default. Build solution-focused habits. Make it automatic. Transform how you operate. Chapter 10. Maintain forward momentum. The final principle of solution-focused thinking is momentum. Always be moving forward. Always be making progress. Never stay stuck. Problem-focused thinking leads to stagnation. You analyze the problem endlessly. You wait for perfect conditions. You hope circumstances will change. Meanwhile, nothing moves forward. Solution-focused thinking creates momentum. You take action. You make progress. Even small progress. Even imperfect progress. But always forward. This momentum is crucial because momentum compounds. Small movements forward create larger movements. Action creates more action. Progress builds confidence, which fuels more progress. But momentum also works in reverse. Stagnation creates more stagnation. Inaction makes action harder. Each day you don't move forward makes the next day harder. So maintaining forward momentum is essential for solution-focused effectiveness. Here's how to maintain momentum. First, make progress daily. No matter how small, do something every day that moves you forward on important problems. This daily action prevents stagnation and builds compound progress. 1% improvement daily compounds to 37 times better over a year. Second, track your momentum. Keep visible records of your progress. Lists of problems solved. Journal of actions taken. Metrics that show improvement. Seeing momentum reinforces it. You're motivated to maintain your forward movement. Third, celebrate small wins. Don't wait for complete problem resolution to acknowledge progress. Celebrate each step forward. These celebrations fuel continued action. They prove you're making progress even when the problem isn't fully solved yet. Fourth, avoid analysis paralysis. Don't let perfect planning prevent action. Do enough analysis to identify a reasonable next step, then take it. You can always adjust, but you can't adjust if you never start. Fifth, maintain action even when uncertain. You'll often face situations where the best path isn't clear. Move forward anyway. Taking action in uncertainty is better than waiting for certainty. Action creates clarity that thinking alone doesn't provide. Sixth, use the next physical action principle. Always know your next concrete physical action. Not work on the project, but write the first paragraph or call John for feedback. Specific physical actions are easy to start and maintain momentum. Seventh, create deadlines and commitments. External accountability maintains momentum. When you've committed to delivering something by a deadline, you maintain action. Without deadlines, it's easy to let things drift. Eighth, connect to purpose. Remember why solving this problem matters. Your purpose provides energy for continued action. When momentum wanes, reconnect to your why. Let it fuel your next steps. Ninth, reduce friction for action. Make it as easy as possible to maintain momentum. Remove obstacles. Prepare in advance. Create systems. The easier it is to take action, the more likely you'll maintain momentum. 10th, get back on track immediately after interruptions. You'll face setbacks, interruptions, and obstacles. That's inevitable. The key is getting back to forward momentum immediately. Don't let one interrupted day become a week. Resume action as quickly as possible. Here's what happens when you maintain forward momentum. You solve problems that others abandon. You achieve goals that others quit pursuing. You create results that others only dream about. Not because you're more talented or lucky, because you maintained momentum when others stopped. Think about any significant achievement. It required sustained momentum over time. Not heroic bursts of effort, but consistent forward movement. That's what you're building. The capacity to maintain momentum regardless of circumstances. Let me give you an example. Two people want to write books. Person A waits for inspiration. They write when they feel motivated. Some days they write a lot. Many days they write nothing. A year later they have sporadic chapters but no complete book. Person B commits to writing 500 words daily. Some days it's terrible writing. Some days it's good. But every day they move forward. A year later, they have a complete draft because they maintained daily momentum. Same goal. Different approach to momentum. Different outcomes. Momentum creates results. Inconsistency creates incomplete projects. Let me address a concern. What if maintaining momentum means producing low-quality work? Sometimes initial work is lower quality. That's fine. You can revise. But you can't revise what doesn't exist. Momentum produces material to work with. Perfection, while stationary, produces nothing. Also, quality often improves with momentum. The more you practice, the better you get. Stopping and starting prevents this improvement. Another concern, don't we need breaks? Isn't constant momentum exhausting? Momentum doesn't mean working 24/7. It means making some progress daily. Even 10 minutes counts. And you can maintain momentum while resting. Rest days that are planned and temporary don't break momentum. Indefinite drift breaks momentum. Here's your action step. For one current goal or problem, commit to taking action on it every single day for the next 30 days. Even if it's tiny action, even if it's just 10 minutes, something every day that moves you forward. Track your daily actions. Notice how this consistency creates momentum. Notice how much progress you make in 30 days of daily action versus your usual sporadic efforts. This experiment will prove the power of momentum to you. Maintain forward momentum. Take daily action. Never stay stuck. Always progress. We've explored 10 principles of solution-focused thinking. Understand the problem-solution dynamic. Ask better questions. Take ownership of problems. Identify what you can control. Generate multiple options. Take immediate action. Learn from failures. Reframe obstacles as opportunities. Build solution-focused habits. Maintain forward momentum. These aren't just techniques for handling problems. They're a complete approach to life. A mindset that transforms how you experience and navigate every challenge. When you adopt solution-focused thinking, everything changes. Problems that used to overwhelm you become puzzles to solve. Obstacles that used to stop you become opportunities to grow. Setbacks that used to devastate you become lessons to learn from. You stop being a victim of circumstances. You become an agent of change. You stop waiting for things to get better. You start making things better. This shift is profound because it affects every area of your life. Your career, your relationships, your health, your finances, your personal growth. Everything benefits from solution-focused thinking. But here's what I need you to understand. These principles only work if you implement them. Reading about them changes nothing. Applying them changes everything. So here's my final challenge. Commit to becoming solution-focused starting today. Not someday. Not when circumstances are better. Not when you feel ready. Today. Choose one principle from this audiobook. Maybe it's asking better questions. Maybe it's taking immediate action. Maybe it's generating multiple options. Choose one and implement it consistently for the next 7 days. Make it your focus. Practice it deliberately. Then add another principle. And another. Build your solution-focused capability systematically. Within a month, you'll notice a significant shift. You'll catch yourself automatically moving from problems to solutions. You'll feel more capable, more confident, more effective. Within 3 months, solution-focused thinking will be part of who you are. Not something you do occasionally, but your default operating mode. Within a year, your life will look dramatically different. Because you've been solving problems rather than dwelling on them. Taking action rather than just worrying, moving forward rather than staying stuck. And here's the beautiful thing. Becoming solution-focused doesn't just change your life. It changes the lives of everyone around you. Your solution-focused approach inspires others. Your willingness to tackle problems gives others courage. Your focus on possibilities opens others' minds. You become a force for progress in your family, your workplace, your community. Because solution-focused people don't just solve their own problems, they help others solve theirs too. The world needs more solution-focused people. More people who don't just complain about what's wrong but work to make things right. More people who face obstacles and ask, how can we solve this? Instead of, why is this happening? That person can be you. That person should be you, but only if you commit to the path, only if you practice the principles, only if you shift from problems to solutions. Life will always contain problems. That's inevitable. The question is, will those problems define you, or will you define yourself through how you solve them? Choose to be defined by your solutions, not by your problems. By your actions, not by your circumstances. By what you create, not by what you endure. Focus on solutions, not problems. Ask, what can I do? Not why me. Take action instead of just thinking. Learn from failures instead of being stopped by them. Generate options instead of feeling stuck. Maintain momentum instead of drifting. This is the solution-focused life. This is how effective people operate. This is how you achieve things despite obstacles. Start today. Face your first problem with solution-focused thinking. Generate options. Take action. Make progress. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Build the habit of focusing on solutions. Make it automatic. Make it who you are. Because when you focus on solutions, problems become temporary. Obstacles become manageable. Challenges become opportunities. You become unstoppable. Focus on solutions, not problems. Transform your thinking. Transform your life. Your solution-focused journey begins now.